win or lose, hit the booze.
You're listening to Bears Beyond the Gate, a Bristol Bears podcast made by fans for fans. We're 2.5 season card holders at Ashton Gate who love the club, the game and all things Bears. Well, the waiting was over, and after an extended pre-season, the Premiership finally returned to Ashton Gate with the visit of Leicester Tigers. With both teams missing international players, it was an opportunity for new signings and squad players to impress, and impress they did, albeit mainly for Bristol. At 25-0 up and cruising, some of us were wondering whether we were going to get that magical 80-minute performance in game day 1. However, the second half was more of a battle, but ultimately it was a satisfactory win. We chat about the game and those players who made a good impression and introduce a new feature, contributions from our listeners. Because let's face it, we don't always spot the obvious. Next up is Saints away, so we discuss how we think that one will go and what team we think we'll be sending up to the East Midlands. And we hear briefly from another friend of the pod, Northampton Echo's sport writer Tom Vickers, as he gives us the lowdown on their game at Sale this afternoon and how they might set up against us next Saturday. Finally, we round up any other Bears-related news that we feel is worthy of discussion, including the return of fireworks in front of the Dolman and our ongoing obsession with photographing people wearing dry robes at rugby. I'm Pete and I'm joined by Miles and Lee for a cheeky beer and a bit of rugby banter. Well, lads, back at the pod pad. Lee, how are you?
I'm a lot better after Friday night, mate. Yeah, so see, that reverse psychology of mine worked, didn't it? See, I told you I was going to go for it, and what was my prediction? We were going to lose by 3 points.
Yeah.
So you're welcome.
Well, I suppose that's one way of getting round your negativity there. But anyway, fair play. And then Miles, how are you? How's the project going?
The Instagram project,
Yes.
it's been a bit quiet. It's a slow burner. I'm not sure I've posted anything since last week, mate. And in fact, I know that you were fiddling around with Instagram on Friday night and saw a little video on there, so I like that a lot. But apart from that, great weekend. Pete and I had our last training paddle before our paddleboard race next weekend. A little bit cold this morning, I must say, on Bristol docks, but made it through the day. Just watched England. Enjoyed some nuts. Fans will thankfully like to hear that we finished eating crisps and nuts for the rest of the evening, and looking forward to chatting to you boys about some rugby.
Excellent. Well, let's get into the Tigers game, but before we give our thoughts and views, I thought it would be nice to get the opinions of some of our listeners, as we're now are now body down. So I thought we could do with a few more views. So boys, what I did, I didn't actually tell you about this, but I sent a tweet out on Saturday, kind of saying, now the stardust has settled. Be interested to hear people's thoughts on tactics, player performances, atmosphere, fireworks, that sort of thing. And also, I did actually ask if anyone had gone to the Steve Lansdown Q&A, and I did get a few answers back from that, but we maybe deal with that a bit later on.
Okay.
So what I thought I'd do, and we had quite a few. I had quite a few answers, so I can't do everybody. So I thought I'd choose a few, and then maybe in future weeks we'll get a few other people on. So first off, the first person to reply actually was at CycleFan, which is Anthony Baxter, and he said, "Great start. Josh Bassett didn't score against us at last. And I thought of you when the fireworks went off. Love the pod." So not much analysis there, but it was a nice reply, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But here we go. We've got Mr. Daniel Ronnie at Mr. Daniel Ronnie. He said, "Was buzzing. We had two Tigers sat behind us, and they couldn't believe
Two
Tigers
supporters.
No, it was two fat. No, it wasn't two fat Tigers. No, it was two Tigers fans.
Christ. Don't spill your beer over them.
Sat behind us, and they couldn't believe how well we played. I think Jimmy Williams is just the unsung hero of our team. I really, really hope he doesn't lose his spot because he's not a big name." And then we had a long-standing listener, Nick Howell, at AnyHowell76. He said, "Off to a win is a great start. Pinch of salt we need to take is that Tigers weren't great. Brackets, new coach, so need time, I suppose. And missing more internationals than us. Good to get a win, but feet need to be firmly on the ground. If we win at Saints, then it gets better." Fair play. Then we had one from at Cones Jarwin, which is Carwyn Jones. Much more pragmatic, having brackets finally learnt lessons from last year in terms of taking points and kicking attackingly. Van Rensburg looks a very shrewd signing that will add to some of the stardust we've got. Atmosphere was bouncing as usual. The score helped that though. And then I think finally we've got at Aaron Pratton, and he said, great to get the win, really important for confidence as we've struggled there for a while. We looked tense in the second half, potentially not used to having a lead and unsure how to close out the game. Led to poor kicking and slower attacking play, but lots of positives, but much to work on. So boys, there was a few... But much to work on.
Yeah.
So sorry to those...
Learning.
Yes.
Yeah. Sorry to those people that didn't get it read out, but as I say, we might do it again.
Yeah.
But before we get on, there's one more bit of fan engagement, boys, that I want to let you know about. We were in the bar afterwards, Miles, and who did we bump into but our good old mate Binnsy. And we haven't heard from Binnsy for a while. And
He's a busy lad, isn't he?
Well, he's a busy lad. And I just so happened to have the recorder in my pocket at the time.
That was a bonus.
So I thought, you know what? Let's give Binnsy the floor. So let's hear what he said. Binnsy, how did you like tonight?
Well, I was at the Avon Packet. We were chatting to a few Leicester fans, and I thought we was going to get stuffed tonight. But fair play to the boys. Come out. We had a fantastic first forte. Gabriel Abatoye, or something like that, his name, scored one of the fantastic tries. How we done it, how we finished it, I'll never know. Come out the second half, and we was absolutely crap. Let Leicester back into it, but we got through and we won a game that I did not expect. Come on, the Bears!
So there you go, boys. Binnsy, we like him. He gets straight to the point, doesn't he?
Doesn't he?
Yes. And I like that about him. So
I think the 10 beers might have helped with that, don't you?
I think so. And there was actually quite a lot more in the recording, but I had to edit it and so on. So
we're a family show,
Yeah.
of course.
There's nothing like a scrumped up Binnsy, is there, after a Friday victory?
absolutely right. So there's the thoughts of the fans. But Miles, you were at the game.
Absolutely.
What was your, obviously, we saw the win and everyone loves to win and you did predict a very narrow win, but you did predict a win. So well done, Miles.
Thank you.
But what was your general thoughts of what you saw?
I think I'd just like to concur with all the comments from the kind fans who sent you some Twitter feeds there. Yeah, I agree. I thought first half, I couldn't quite believe what we were watching, could you? We were absolutely electric and... I think you've written this in a sort of post article. I mean, Tigers didn't really turn up. They seemed to send pussycats along on Friday evening. Insignificant. I mean, you're right. Bassett, Hassel-Collins barely got the ball and were insignificant when they got it. And we were just on fire. I mean, you will talk about players, but the likes of Ibatoye had an amazing game. And I can't go through the Bristol lineup and say that any player played badly. I thought it was a really excellent team spirit in the first half. Yes, we went off the boil. We'll talk about it a bit more, but I don't quite know what went wrong in the second half. But I think luckily we were so far ahead, took our foot off the gas a little bit. But what an encouraging first game. And you're right. I mean, I don't think we really predicted we would play that well.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I think, we obviously hoped, well, me and you hoped that we'd win. Obviously, Lee predicted a loss. But although, of course, it was reverse psychology, as he said. But, I mean, I don't know about you, but what really got me in that first half was just how focused we were and how disciplined. And having been to a couple of the pre-season games where, it'd been a bit loose at times and so on, it made me realise that actually this was what all the preparation was about. And I don't think... Apart from one misconversion from Asia, I don't think we made a mistake in that first half. We didn't drop a ball. We didn't give away penalty. Penalty count was incredibly low, if at all. And we were just really, really accurate in everything we did. And consequently, we went to, we were 22-0 up at half time. But Lee, you saw it on TNT, and obviously it's a slightly different angle. I mean, what did you pick up from the game?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of good points, especially that, as you say, from the listeners. That was I loved that bit actually. I agree with a lot of it. I do feel though that I don't know if we started so much in the second half. I thought Leicester had brought on some good replacements. Yeah, and I thought they collectively had a boot up the arse, and I think that made a bit of a difference in the momentum shift. But I do feel that it was, as much as you can say, Nick Howell was saying, obviously Leicester, a lot of players, internationals, but we had a few out as well. And we've got to remember that they're a work in progress, Leicester, aren't they? They've got a new coach, so it's going to take them a bit of time to gel. But I'd rather focus on how good we were, and I think focusing on how focused we were right from the kickoff. And the beers were flowing down. I was watching it on the TV because I just thought there wasn't anything we did wrong at all. And I say that, that first half was some of the best rugby I've seen for a long time.
I got to say, I had a bit of a headache Saturday morning as well. Yeah. Me and Miles did stay after for a few pints and whisper it quietly. I got down to the bottom of North Street and had a kebab as well. But you've got to celebrate these things in some way. But I think you're right about Leicester. They couldn't get any worse. Yeah. But I don't think that's. I think you're right. It's focusing on us. We put them under so much pressure and it kind of does show. We've had a long pre-season. Pat after the game. I did see it on BT Sport. I don't know if you saw it, but he did say that the big focus had been on basics and fundamentals and positive body language, and I kind of sensed that he was very relieved, if stroke pleased, that the players absolutely delivered the plan.
Yeah. One thing that was quite obvious. Apart setting aside, we're going to talk about player performances a bit later, aren't we? But one thing that did strike me was how good Noah Heward was on the wing, defensively. I thought it was a Luke Morahan-esque performance from him. I thought he was really solid, and I was slightly worried prior to kick-off that might be an area we'd struggle, especially knowing how good the Tigers wingers are. I thought he was absolutely immense, and full credit to him. Yeah. And also Kloska coming on as well. He was the fourth choice tight head, isn't he? He wouldn't have been expecting to play any part in that game. And you've got to think, these boys have stepped up, Kloska and Will Capon. They step up and they perform, and that was great.
Yeah, this is why we've got Lee as our third man. I think live at the ground, I perhaps didn't even notice Noah Heward. And it's no disrespect, because you thought he had a fantastic game. But it's funny that, that Ibitoye, who got man of the match, was so significant out on the left as we in the first half that, I didn't even notice Noah Heward. And you're right, the guys who came on, you could argue that we went off the boil bit. We lost our number 1, number 10, didn't we, through injury? Yeah. And then we lost another prop, Jay Tyak, who looked to have been a little bit of trouble with his shoulder. And then I think, obviously, Tigers, put us on the back foot in the second half, and we crumbled a little bit in the scrum. Well, not a little bit, a lot. We were giving away scrum penalties, which we'll come on to talk about, is perhaps a little bit worrying on the injury front. But fair play. If you spotted Noah Heward, I thought he had a great game. I think defensively, didn't put a foot wrong.
There was a massive hit that he put on Mike Brown. And I just thought that was really impressive for someone you didn't really expect it from initially.
We weren't really expecting him to even get in the squad on the day, were we? That's not, we thought we'd be on the other wing.
He is a fullback, and you're right. It was a selection out of the blue, but actually, in hindsight, it was quite a sensible selection because. We knew what Leicester were going to do. They were going to pump the ball high. Yeah. We needed someone solid. And in fact, Miles, I'm quite surprised you didn't notice him during the game, because I would have said his performance was the dictionary definition of solid.
It was.
And he didn't. He was up against Hassel Collins. It is a physical force, and he was right up on him. There was one really good bit in the first half where it was a kick chase, wasn't it? And Heward got Hassel Collins and just dumped him into touch, and it was really strong. In fact, on comms, because I watched it afterwards, I think they said it was an Antoine Dupont moment when it was some tackle somewhere, and that's pretty good going. And the other thing I'd pick up, Miles, you said, which is right, the scrum did, we did struggle a little bit in the second half. There was a couple, but actually when Kloska came on, if I remember rightly, he came on at tight head and he won. They won the first scrum.
They did.
And it was a big ask for those boys, it was. And I think that's fair play. That these fellas are going to know that they're going to have to be used to coming on in tight situations. So I think in that sense it was really good.
And one thing I will just quickly mention, Pete, because obviously being big fans of Tempest, the referee on the pod. Tempo.
His mate Dicko's out in World Cup, isn't he?
Dicko. So, but it was a brilliant thing. I think it was in the first 20 minutes anyway, with Joe Batley giving Tempo a little smash around, which was absolutely brilliant. I love that.
I did see that live as well, actually. It was right in front of us, actually. On
Is
the
that why he
diamond.
gave such poor decisions after that? Did he? He was a bit concussed.
Well, I think to be fair, I think we have to be fair. I thought Dicko, he never has a good game, but Tempo, I thought Tempo had a good game. I thought he controlled it well. I quite like him as a ref. I've always quite liked him because he's quite confident in his own ability. And and he kind of went down after Batley, but he dusted himself off and got on with it. So no, I think it was a good thing. I mean, going back to the other thing you said, about the first half and Ibitoye, but I think what also was really good that first half was our kicking game.
Absolutely.
It wasn't meaning that it was. I mean, there was quite a lot of kicking. I think we probably might have kicked more in the stats, but it was really purposeful. And I tell you what, we're all missing Charles Piatow. But Rich Lane, I mean, there was something on comm said he had the sidestep of a Piatow, and I thought, well, he's definitely got the boot of a Piatow, and he's got a bit of pace. It's like, how far away is Rich Lane from being the new Charles Piatow? I thought he had a fantastic game. I mean, unfortunate for their first try, the bounce in the second half. He did. He got done by the bounce, and we were all moaning. Like Miles was moaning. He's like, never let the ball bounce. And then it was tough. It was a good little chip through. But apart from that, I thought he was exemplary. And I think Max Malins, who's probably out in England now, wondering why he can't get a game at fullback for England, must be like have half an eye over his shoulder and wondering whether he's going to get a game at fullback for Bristol when he comes back. But it's going to be great to have both of those. So Lane was good, and then as you say, I mean Ibitoye. On phenomenal game. I mean, he was absolutely deserved to be man of the match. And not just with his pace and that amazing try, but his kicking.
He's learned how to kick, isn't he? We were groaning last season when he tried to kick the ball, but fair play to the lad. You're right, his running game, phenomenal. And his kicking game, he's learnt to do spiral bombs all summer, hasn't he?
I think it's the Dave Allred effect, isn't it? I mean, like I say, the kicking was absolutely on point. We could not have, done any better on it. The first half, and I also thought what was noticeable for me was the speed at the line out as well was really good. It was just...
We do, I think, we do vary it at the line out. And it was absolutely brilliant to see us out Tigers with that Thacker try. I mean, rolling ball, they just splintered everywhere. And I think then Ibitoye, off the restart, we then scored again because normally we let the opposition score off the restart. And I mean, that first half, it was almost impossible to find anything wrong but just loads of positives. Second half, I think their kicking game got a bit better. Ours was, I think we did go into our shells a little bit. And I think even Pat said afterwards that he was a bit disappointed that we didn't go for the bonus point try. But then again, I think it's difficult. I think Tigers, got their act together a little bit, put us under pressure. And of course, that's the thing that really matters, is how we act under pressure and how we wrestle back momentum. And there was a moment when they scored that second try and I thought, but we brought Vakatawa on, which probably he did nothing, but just psychologically for Leicester to see him come on probably kind of gave us a little bit 5 minutes more grace. And in the end, we saw the game out, relatively comfortably. So, I mean, a great win, really. But, what else? Was there anything else, boys, that you want to say about it?
Well, I was amazed James Dunn, and I hold my hands up for this. I've always seen James Dunn as a six. I love him as a player. I think he's fantastic. When I seen him in Lock, I was slightly bemused, but I was just thinking, what a game that young man had as well. I just thought really that the second row was brilliant, and I thought, I don't know, he seemed a lot bigger. I don't know if he's pumped up.
He does seem a big unit, doesn't he?
Yeah.
I mean, Bats had the passion that he always does, doesn't he?
Yeah.
But Dunn got substituted off and we were like, phenomenal performance. And I think he was one of the players of the game, I think, for Bristol for such a young lad.
Did we say this last week? He is our first jib cutter of the season, isn't he? I think, or I tweeted it. He's, but I don't just like the cut of his jib. I like the look of his whole kind of, like, I don't want to sound a bit bigger here, but his whole kind of setup, he's a thoroughbred.
Yes.
To like get a metaphor in another kind of area of sport. He is a thoroughbred. I could see him he's obviously not a Grand National because that's they plod round, but I think he's more of a Gold Cup winner.
I'd agree.
I think he's played himself into the squad next weekend, which we'll come to chat about. Great game.
Any other performances we want to point out? I mean, we've done some of the other ones. What about, boys, what about, you can go on this, what about Captain Fitz, Miles?
Well, yeah, phenomenal. Did he do anything wrong? No. I mean, yeah, he's a young lad. He's taken over the captaincy. He led from the front. I mean, he's just sort of all over the park. In a breakdown, in the running lines, he was just everywhere, and he was one of the top performers, I think, of the night. I mean, like we said, who had a bad game? None of them, but I think Ibatoy stood out. Dunn, Fitz, and dare we say, Golden Locks and DT had another phenomenal game. I think it's flanker.
Janzi van Rensburg and Jimmy Williams in the centres. Our men's for day, and it's nice. Is when AJ came off, it was nice to just have that. Do you know what? We've got Big Jimmy there, who can just slot in at 10. They've got a massive boot on him, hasn't he? And I just thought they were immense in the centre.
As our listener said earlier, I mean, he's the unsung hero, but if he keeps playing like this, he's going to be singing pretty loudly quite soon. But I do think it's an interesting point that was made, is that when all of our the Fijian's going to be coming back now. He's been marked as potentially a centre. Is he going to lose out his place because he isn't a big name? But I don't know. I don't think Pat's that kind of. I know Pat likes his big signings, but I think he knows the value of Jimmy Williams. And,
absolutely.
And it's just he's streetwise as well. He's played in the Championship. Yeah. He's played the end of last season. He just looks. And I just, as we say again, I just love the fact he sticks the ball down and boots it. Yeah. None of this nonsense rocking backwards and forwards.
It was also nice to see Captain Superman back as well, because we did mention it, didn't we, last week?
He had a spring in his step when he came on. Yeah. Absolutely. And you know what? I felt as though I could, because often he looks like he's got the responsibility on his shoulders, but I felt as though he was a bigger man. He didn't have to worry about the captaincy.
Yeah, I agree.
I agree. And I think maybe, just maybe, and as Nick Howell said, it's very early days, but maybe, just maybe, that decision to make Fitz Harding captain on many different levels could be an absolute masterstroke this season.
And also, I mean, that was made with a view to the future, wasn't it? Because we think Fitz Harding is one of our boys who's going to carry us through the next 4 or 5 years. So it does make a lot of sense.
One last thing, I think, just a little caveat on all of this quite exciting chat, boys, and rightly so, was the injury to Jay Tyack, the injury before the game to Max Laheath, and the news before the game, or the week leading, that we've signed, we've signed yet another mullet by the looks of it, but we've signed a tight head prop from Jersey Reds as injury cover.
Sam Graham's law.
But of course, we know that if it's injury cover, that means somebody who is injured for a long time, not somebody who's injured in a warm-up. And of course, the one player we haven't seen since the Barbarians is Jan Thomas, who has been an integral part of our front row. And there was some speculation on the forum that Jan is kind of got a long-term head injury issue, and it kind of suggests that when he's signing another tight head prop, because we know that Jan is sometimes swapped over, that my fear is we may not be seeing Jan for quite a while.
Yeah, which will be an absolute massive loss for us, because again, Jan's been like Joe Batley is. He's a guy that's carried us and pumped the crowd up, hasn't he? When we've really needed him at times, and let's hope this is not as bad as we fear it might be. But just by the process of elimination, it would say that Jan Thomas would be the guy who possibly is out.
Okay, well, I think that's done and dusted. Lots and lots of positives, always something to work on, but I think it sets us up nicely for the rest of the season. So you're listening to Bears Beyond the Gate. If you like what you hear, please give us a rating or review, brackets especially if you're listening on Apple Podcasts apparently, or get in touch via X at Bears Beyond Gate, or visit our Facebook page, Bears Beyond Gate, or even drop us an email at bearsbeyondthegate@gmail.com, bearing in mind we've all got full-time jobs, so we may not reply straight away. And of course, that said, if you are young and trendy, and you can also follow us on Instagram. But remember that it's Miles's project, so don't expect anything too fancy soon. As he said, it's a grower like the European shirt. So, We got Saints away next weekend, a place that we've had kind of one or two challenges in the past. But before we talk about it, I managed to catch up with the sports writer from the Northampton Echo. Well, quite literally just before we came on. So he was talking to me after their win against, their very narrow loss against Sale this afternoon. And let's see or hear what he thought. It's great to talk to you, Tom. Thanks very much for giving up your time. We're talking quite soon after the Saints or the Sale Saints game this afternoon. It was a bit of a last minute pommeling of the line for you boys, but they didn't make it in the end. So how did you see the game?
To be honest, it was just a really, really good performance. I mean, second half, Sale didn't actually score a single point, and this is Sale Sharks, the Premiership runners up. In a home game, and Saints really, really should have won. They haven't won there since 2017. They've never played as well as that in that time. They had so many opportunities. They were 20 points to 10 down at half time, and it was quite incredible that they were, because they had something like 13 visits to the Sale 22, and Sale had something like 5. The points really should have been the other way around, and that would have put Saints in command, and you'd have thought they'd maybe kick on, considering how they played second half. But fair play to Sale, they're a tough team defensively, aren't they? And they held out at the end, even with a man in the sin bin for the last couple of minutes. They gave away a lot of penalties, but they managed to push Saints back, and two tiring teams, Sale just about edged it, unfortunately, for the Saints.
Yeah, it was a pretty impressive finish. It was a bit unfortunate, as you say. As far as I could see, that was a fairly similar team to the one that came to Ashton Gate and played, in the Premiership Cup, although we might call it pre-season game, a couple of weeks ago. And that was quite a close game. I think we shaded it by 1 point, didn't we? So I imagine that they'll probably take quite a lot of confidence from that result, or that performance today, and be looking forward to welcoming us next Saturday.
Yeah, Saints have been, as every team are, because rugby is such a brutal sport. Obviously, Saints have been hit pretty hard by injuries. So, the reason this team is similar to that one you mentioned, obviously, is because on that day at Ashton Gate, Saints were actually just then starting to reintegrate some of their more senior players. They were bringing more and more back. Obviously, at Ashton Gate, there was like Burbank and Ram, who came off the bench, and obviously that was a really interesting game, as they usually are between Saints and Bristol. But Saints have got quite a lot of injuries at the moment, so they're having to they've obviously got young scrum half, 18-year-old Archie McParland on the bench. He's obviously been really good during the Premiership Rugby Cup, but naturally they wouldn't normally start a season with an 18-year-old on the bench. It's just the fact that obviously they have had so many injuries. And to be honest, the young lads are stepping up. Saints always give chances now to their young guys, and their young guys that come through the academy they trust, because they've got such good grounding in the game, and they tend to play how Saints want to play. So it's interesting to see these guys. Obviously, they'd like to get a lot more of their senior players back. They're obviously missing players like Augustus. Dingwall went off injured today. So, I'm sure Bristol will go to the Gardens with some confidence, given what they did against Leicester, and given the fact that Saints will be missing quite a lot of players. But because there's so few Premiership games this season with only 10 teams, every match is crucial, and Saints, will already be under pressure. They already need to win. You can really not afford to lose many home games, if any at all, if you want to get anywhere near the top 4, let alone the top 2.
Yeah, it's a good point you make. There's always pretty exciting games between us. Normally, it feels like when we visit Franklin's Gardens, you score a lot of points, play pretty expansive rugby. Despite what you've just said about injuries and stuff like that, do you think that's the way they'll approach the game next Saturday, and just try and kind of run us ragged and move us around?
Yeah, they'd love to. That's obviously the Saints' DNA, and obviously I think it's kind of Bristol's DNA, really, isn't it, to play attacking rugby? That's just how the two teams play, and that's why whenever they play each other, it tends to be one of the better games of the season. But as Saints showed today, that they're really desperate to try to develop this all-court game, which is what they had in 2014 when they won their only Premiership title. Back then they could play any style against anyone, and actually the performance at Sale today was a huge positive in that regard, because they won like 3 scrum penalties in the second half against Sale. They didn't they did well at line-out time on a few occasions. They showed that they could match that physicality. So Saints will be desperate to maintain that physicality if they can against Bristol and put them under pressure that way. But of course, Saints want to play attacking rugby, but that only comes from what your forwards could do. And if Saints can get parity against packs, then Saints will fancy their chances against any team if they can get that parity. But that is obviously easier said than done in the Premiership.
Okay, Tom, I'm going to put you on the spot. First of all, what do you think the result will be next Saturday? And do you fancy having a little score prediction?
Well, I predicted I try to be as realistic as I can be with my predictions, and I did actually predict Sale to beat Saints 25-17. So I wasn't miles away, although Saints should have actually won, and I would have been happy to be wrong. But against Bristol, I'm not entirely sure who's going to be available in terms of players for Saints, but it's a fairly similar setup. At home, I can't back against Saints at home, so I'm going to say a typically lively game, plenty of tries. I'm going to go for 32-20 to the Saints.
Brilliant. Well, look, I really appreciate you giving up your time, and look forward to next weekend. So there you go, lads. I mean, it's always good to talk to Tom. I mean, he's a journalist. He knows what he's talking about. He's always been very willing to come and talk to us, which we really appreciate. Yeah, he sounds like... I mean, we saw Saints play in the pre-season, or I did. And actually, the pre-season game, their team was fairly similar to the one they had out today, give or take a few. So, we kind of know what to expect, I think. Yeah. And I think the big thing that came out of Tom's one was that he was pretty impressed how their forwards fronted up away at Sale, which we know, and everyone in the league knows, is not an easy place to go and try and assert yourself physically. So, I mean, we know we're going to go, and I'd like to think we're going to go and do our best and try and keep our accuracy. But, I mean, I think really from our point of view, I mean, maybe just quickly think about what sort of team we might be sending there, and then perhaps go for a score prediction again afterwards. So, do you want to take that one firstly?
What, team-wise?
Team-wise, yeah. So pick a few.
Well, I mean, obviously the injury front, we don't know. We know there's a few that aren't so far away now.
Yeah, I mean, I think Tyak looked like he's gone.
He's gone.
And I think AJ might, I don't know what you thought on the comms. When I looked at it, on TNT, but when I looked at it the next day, it looked hamstring to me, which worries me, because that can be a few weeks. Yeah.
I mean, I think obviously if that does happen, then there's Williams play 10, or obviously we've got Callum Sheedy as well. Yeah. So I don't think there's too much there. Woolley, for me, would start at loose head. Facts, we know that already, don't we? Then who have we got? Then it would
Max,
be.
Isn't it? It depends what was wrong with him.
Yeah,
because he would have started
very late pulling out from the squad, wasn't it? So we would hope that something fairly minor, and a week later, and a little trip to the physio bench, and he might
I mean, I'd like to think Max starts George Kloska on the bench.
If fit.
But I think if we're then looking at someone else starting, if it's Kloska or it's one of the Ben Solomons, it's because they weren't listed as unavailable, just not picked. It's going to be a challenge because they're young lads, and we know they got talent. Yeah. But away at Franklin's Gardens, on the back of them playing quite well at Sale up front, is a big challenge. But this is all part of having the academy.
Absolutely, and I think obviously the second row sorted now, isn't it? Dunn and Big Joe Batley. For me, 6, 7, and 8 be Fitzhardin, Dan Thomas, and Bradbury.
We didn't mention Bradbury, but he's
again unsung
hero. Yeah. He was there. He was just doing his job.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is all we can ask.
He doesn't ask for any plaudits for it, does he? He's just that's what I do. That's what I get paid for. And then I think obviously you've got Randall. Then whoever's fit. If this AJ isn't fit, then Williams, I'd say maybe at 10, or Pat does like Sheedy, doesn't he? So Callum could come in. I think Ebitoi's like first name on the team sheet anyway. And then depending on if Williams is at 10, and if Sheedy's at 10, Williams at 12 with Janzi van Rensburg. And then obviously I think Noah Heward stays, if fit, he stays on the wing, and Rich Lane fullback.
Who did you say at 12? If Williams was playing 10? Did you say?
Oh, no, I didn't mention that.
Because
No,
if
but
Williams does play 10, I suppose Piers O'Connor is going to
Exactly.
Yeah.
come and start.
He came on, didn't he? I think you're absolutely right. I'd be inclined to put Shido at 10, wouldn't you? Because Williams and Van Rensburg had a fantastic combination in the centre.
Yeah.
And why not? I mean, we went to the Cambridge match and Shido came on and looked really good and was kicking everything.
And he's the established
And he's a
one.
natural number, number 10, isn't he? So why not? And I think you're right. Ibatoye picks himself. I think Nualango's he's not quite there, is he? And we don't know what happened to Diego Bailey and Bates. But Hewitt had a good game. So why would I
saw
change
Diego
that.
Bailey in the sports bar, actually.
Did you?
Yeah, I think he was getting his 3 pint of Thatchers before 7.
Yeah.
No, actually, no. He looked all right. He didn't look injured as far as I could tell, but, maybe it's a lot of... there's competition, isn't there?
Oh,
There's a lot of
absolutely.
competition.
This is great. To have competition in the backs.
Pat threw us a curveball with Heward for this week. Maybe there might be another curveball. I think I kind of agree with what Miles says. It's that Sheedy at 10 with Piers O'Connor on the bench to cover centre and or wing and or fullback so that Jimmy Williams can go to 10 if necessary.
Yeah.
And I guess we'll see who takes the kicking plaudits, but I'm not sure. I think Shido will be furiously going through all of the hard drive to try and delete the video of him hitting the post from 5 yards, and then say to Pat, no, I think you're mistaken, Pat. That wasn't me.
I think you're
that hit
right.
the post.
Do we need a couple of kickers on the pitch? Is probably not a bad idea, is it?
It's having the variations, like you say, would make total sense.
Jimmy took to the big long kicks. Admittedly, one was just a metre short, but it gives us options.
Mind you, if Shido is on and then is going for, we win a penalty and then he's going for the 22, and he did get better. But I'd quite like to see Rich Lane have a go at that, especially if it's the right side for the left footer, because we always felt that Pietau should have done more of that when it was the right side.
Yeah.
I always felt that was. I thought for £1 million a year, I thought he could at least step up and have a go. Yeah,
kicks per
he
kicks
could
per pound.
kick it.
He didn't get a lot
He
for our
could
money,
kick
did
it.
we?
I think that's the only area that we could criticise Big Charles in, really, isn't it? Is that occasionally
we can now. He's not
more
here.
of that.
Anyway, boys, I think Tom has given us the lowdown on what Saints can be like. I think we've got to go with confidence, but we clearly do not rest on our laurels.
No.
Cautious optimism.
They are going, even though they lost, they are definitely going to be looking forward to welcoming us. But I think there was enough for us to see that on Friday that if we can keep that discipline and keep that precision, we've got big players that can make a difference. So I'm kind of cautiously optimistic. Before we get on to predictions, is there one more thing you want to say, Lee?
I just want to say, we all know how big momentum is in sport, and I think if we could just nick something in, at Franklin Gardens, I think that, we'd be 2 games in and that'd just start the ball rolling and the optimism will start to flow, wouldn't it?
Yeah, with 10 teams, you can't be just throwing away games now, can you? Every point is essential, and I like the reporter said, you've just got to get a win on any points. There's not many games, are there, in the season?
Okay, then. Well, let's go for it. Let's have a prediction then, Miles. I think we didn't really look. I think you were the
Just
winner
about,
of the predictions for this week. So, what's your thoughts for?
Well,
for
I'm
next
quietly
week, then?
confident. I know, so Saints fronted up against Sale in the pack, but let's go with the momentum. Why not? We played great first half. Saints, I've been to Franklin's Gardens, a tough place to go. But I'm going to go for a win for Bristol of 25-18.
25-18. Fair enough, Lee.
I don't know whether to keep going. I've almost got to now, haven't I? It's like my lucky Spurs shirt. I've worn that every weekend, and we're unbeaten in the league. So I'm gonna go with it, but just on that basis, and I'm gonna say we're gonna slip to a 35-30 defeat. I think there's going to be a lot of points.
Ooh. I think that it's going to be somewhere between the first half and the second half that we saw on Friday. I think we've got some pace and we got some power and we got Ibatoye, so I think we can score tries. But I do worry a little bit about if they get some momentum. So I'm not convinced we're going to get a bonus point win, but I'm going to go for a win. But I'm going to keep it relatively tight. I think it could be something like 21-17 to us.
Okay. I'm going to put a little star next to Miles. He's the winner of the week one.
Yeah.
Okay.
It happens.
Well, boys, I think we've decided this season that if we don't feel that there's much more to say, we will move on. We won't talk just for the sake of it. But so we have got a couple of things to finish off on. The first one was women's game. Lee, you've become the women's game correspondent. I think
I've taken over that mantle, haven't I? Yeah. Massive performance again this week. 55-3 victory against Tigers. Oof. And special mention to Grace Compton, who scored a fantastic hat-trick. So we still sit proudly on top of Pool A in the Allianz Cup.
Yeah, brilliant.
Well done, girls.
Miles, one for you. Actually, going back to the game Friday, it's just general thoughts. The attendance was 15,000.
Yeah.
There was a mates rate deal on. It's the opening game of the new Premiership. Disappointed with that number?
Yeah, I think for any fan who went on Friday night, I can't lie, it was disappointing. 15,500 or so. With I tried my best. Like the Duchess came with two friends. There were some colleagues from work on a mates rate deal. And it did look pretty empty. It was pretty obvious we could get a beer fairly easily. I just like to actually commend the club that the digital ticketing system seemed to work very well. There was no hold up at the turnstiles, which we were joking of pre-season. So well done on that front. Seems to have got it sorted. But yeah, I was disappointed really. It was at times a little bit flat, and maybe, I don't know, as a result of that, we were very disappointed post-game. Big win against Leicester. Round to the supporters, sort of club under the south stand. You've got the stage and a singer, etc. To find one bar open, only one bar. I mean, I don't know what's going on with staffing, predicted attendances, but something's not quite right. And I don't know if we talk about, is this a worrying trend at rugby?
Well, I think it is. I think I think I mentioned this in the post article that's going to come out tomorrow. We're doing that again. That it was a bit disappointing. I think clearly it was on telly. Clearly the World Cup is on. So there's been a lot of rugby. But that said, I still think it was a little bit below par. And actually, it's going to be interesting that our next home game is Quins 1:30 on a Saturday. Yeah. Very different sort of audience in some ways, and potentially that's when a lot of the local rugby players are playing, and a lot of people don't like Saturday kickoffs. So it'd be quite interesting to see. And I've seen already that's family day.
Kid a quid.
So Lee, if you fancy it, put a pair of shorts on and put your and we could get you in for a quid, mate.
Nice.
But it's under 12s, it's a quid.
Okay.
Under 19, I think in the Dolman it's 20. So yeah, I mean that's going to be interesting. We'll see.
Well, one thing I did want to mention is because we haven't heard anything about the Q&A, have we, with Stephen Lansdowne? So if any of our listeners, managed to catch any of that, it would be nice if we could, if they could send us some views, just so we kind of had a more rounded picture of what was
was there a question about maybe the rugby product and what Bristol are doing?
It's funny you should say that, lads, because actually someone did tell me what happened at the Q&A, and I did submit a question that I thought was very good. It was all about, there's clearly been a improvement in fan engagement. We thank you for that, but really, what more can be done? There has to be more, not just to engage people in Bears, but also in rugby generally. And I was talking about education packs and subscription services, anything like that. But then afterwards, I put a supplementary question in the email: was, do you fancy coming on Bears Beyond the Gate?
And
apparently Stephen Lansdowne. Well, it was to Downsy, but then that was where the email was. And guess which question he answered?
The latter.
The latter. And apparently I have it on good authority, people on Twitter, but also someone who was there. Because I was trying to get there, boys. I was running to get there. And I didn't make it. And I got there just as I heard them say, and thanks to Steve Lansdowne. And apparently, when the question got asked out, they said, is anyone from Bears on the gate here? And none of us were there.
And of course, you might ask, where were you, Pete?
Well, I'll tell you where I was. I was actually, that's another story. I did something. But I mean, fair play. Boys, we're going to have to start taking this serious because apparently Steve Lansdowne said yes, he would be very happy, but it would have to be in the new year because obviously he's quite busy. But what do you reckon?
Well, I mean, it depends on whether he's going to send the old jet over for us or the helicopter, wouldn't it?
Well, that's what
you
I
assume
thought.
the invite's back in Guernsey,
I suppose he's got to go back for 90 days or whatever to go, but maybe
we can go to him, surely.
Yeah, we could go. We're happy, Steve. We'll come to you.
Yeah,
we'll come to you.
We can do that.
So perhaps, no problem. I mean, we could book a couple of days off work.
Absolutely.
And as you say, get the private jet.
Take some scrumpy up now.
Well, Miles, you must be able to dust off the private jet that you've got somewhere. Up at Filton Airport.
What Miles it's all is.
What the one the Wright brothers designed.
Can you imagine that? Us getting into this little plane and going across the channel.
It wasn't that long ago before you and I were on Concorde, were we?
Wow.
I'm not as a paying customer, I might add.
No,
but anyway.
I'm not actually in the air or anything like that. But all seriousness.
Yeah, no, that would be amazing, wouldn't it?
I mean, I think if and when we make that happen, obviously our people have got to talk to Steve's people and that sort of stuff. But we will.
It's a process.
We will get the fans and the listeners involved and get
some
because it's like when I thought, well, what are we going to ask him? So look, watch this space, everyone.
Yeah.
I think that's it, really. I did have one other thing, but I think we've had enough. I think we've had a nice little chat. It's been a positive one. I mean, we all know that winning really helps.
Absolutely.
Helps everything. So a great start to the Premiership campaign.
Yeah.
And I think the reality is we've only got 10 teams in the league. I mean, I think home games are absolutely vital to win, and every game is important. So I think we'll leave it there, boys, unless you've got anything else to say.
I think we've covered everything, haven't we?
Brilliant. Well, everyone out there, thanks very much for all your inputs. Nice to see a few people at the game on Friday, and have a good week and stay safe.
Come on, Briz.